Hello and welcome back to the page, the channel, whether you're watching this on YouTube or Instagram. Welcome back. Let's talk about what it means to do the work, what the work is. I was compelled to do this video because I had a few conversations with different people, and I feel like, when they're getting their readings and when they're getting their information, they're being told that they're not doing the work or that they need to do some work. And I wanted to make this video to demystify what the work is, okay? Demystify the term, the work. So when spiritualists and spiritual advisors talk about doing the work, they're really referring to shadow work, okay? And shadow work, really what it is integrating your shadow side with your outside personality, the you that you show to the world. And the shadow self, or the shadow side, or the shadow itself is kind of categorized by parts of yourself that you have repressed or that would otherwise be deemed to be negative or something sinister or what have you. And so that's why when people say, when you're getting like readings and things like that, that's why they can sometimes have a negative connotation, because it's kind of like you're releasing the shadow, you're releasing the spirits or the otherwise sinister aspects of what it is you're trying to uncover. So I'm looking down because I have my notes, so that's why I'm looking down here. So I feel like you can decide for yourself what it means to you, whether you feel like the shadow is something dark and sinister, or whether you feel like you're inviting yourself to explore it. Decide that for yourself. I personally feel like there is duality in everything and everyone that holds energy. And I feel like I would invite and encourage you guys to explore your shadow self. I feel like exploring the shadow is sometimes a lifelong journey, but it can really lead to what I like to call radical self-acceptance, okay? There's a lot of value in accepting the darker parts of your personality, but I feel like that's a different video, so I'll continue on about the work. But the last thing I do want to say about the shadow side and the work and all of that good stuff is that it is written into the laws of physics, okay? Isaac Newton's third law of motion says every action has an equal and opposite reaction. The same holds true for energy. The same holds true for our personalities and for who we are and who we present ourselves to be to the world. Like, there's an equal and opposite side of that, you know what I mean? So normally the shadow forms in the early years, and a large part of addressing the shadow side and accepting the shadow self is going back to your childhood. We get our shadow aspects from things that were maybe discouraged in our youth, places where we felt like we were judged in our youth, and that can be in the home, outside of the home. It can also kind of like dive into a little bit of like how we were shown love and how we were shown what was an appropriate way to express love, okay? So like what our guardians showed to us as an appropriate expression of love. So those are definitely huge parts of where we get our shadow self. But before we get into spotting the shadow, I just want to say there are assets in the shadow, and that's a huge value. Hobbies and things and different talents and things that you might have been discouraged from pursuing in your youth can bring you a lot of joy if you find them in your shadow. Okay, if you address them in your shadow, if you accept them, if you bring them out as a expression of your current personality. The split is a huge part of the shadow. Like, when you're split, when you're experiencing the split of the shadow, when your shadow's not integrated, which is like the state that a lot of people are in when they're being told they need to do the work, what it means is like you're operating as two different beings. And who you are when like no one else is in the room with you, and when you're by yourself and when you're comfortable and when you are able to be who you are, is not who you are when you're operating in the outside world. And so it causes a dissonance, and it causes you to like fall short in your goals and in everything, because you have a low, it ties itself up into having a low self-concept because you're not accepting parts of yourself. So those are some reasons why it's very important to address the shadow. But how you address the shadow is by starting the integration process. Okay, you have to spot the shadow first. You have to know how your shadow side is manifesting itself in the outside world. And so one of the ways that can happen is through projection. If you find yourself projecting your insecurities on other people, and a little bit of this is kind of like the idea of an inferiority complex. If you feel like you're always negative towards goals and aspirations of yourself, of others, if you feel like just because there's no precedent for it, it's out of your reach or it's impossible, and you project that onto other people, that's an aspect of your shadow side, or that's a characteristic of your shadow side, projection. Okay, another way your shadow manifests itself is through triggers. So because the universe works towards integration, and because we're all on the path of integration, people, places, and things will come upon us during the time we're addressing our shadows, or I want to say really during like the lifetime. We're going to experience triggers, reminders of our past traumas, and they're really meant to be a catalyst for growth in the shadow. That's really what they're meant to be. They're messengers. Triggers are messengers, okay? And they act to bring awareness to the shadow. So when you are triggered, it would benefit you to take a step back. It would really benefit you to take a step back when you're feeling triggered, and to ask yourself, why am I feeling triggered about this? What about this action or this dialogue or this event is making me feel insecure in myself, and why? So once you have spotted the shadow, and once you've identified, like, these are the ways my shadow is showing up, and it can be more than these different ways. Like, you can get really specific and really detailed with this stuff. This is just like a broad overview of what the work really is and what the work really looks like. But once you get into your spotting of the shadow, and you have an understanding of, where your shadow is showing up in your life, you can begin to have to really go back to recalling some things in your childhood, asking yourself the pressing questions, was I accepted? Was I judged? Okay? You have to start by going back to your childhood, by recalling things, and you can even start by meditating and just asking yourself, what show me, spirit, show me things that are coming up in my shadow. Okay? Once you are aware, once you choose to see like the flaws in your character and the flaws in yourself, it'll be pretty easy. It'll be pretty easy to do the integrating of the shadow. I feel like just the acceptance alone of aspects of your shadow side, of traits of your shadow side, it's a huge step in moving forward, okay? The next thing I want to talk about is shamelessness. Because to integrate your shadow, like I was saying before, you have to have an acceptance of some of the darker parts of your personality. You have to be a little bit shameless in your, for some of you guys, radical ideas. You have to be a little bit shameless in your radical ideas about certain things and topics, and you have to be able to accept it yourself. Really is what it comes down to. Antagonizing the shadow is like the worst thing you can do. Like the shadow's only going to get bigger and meaner if you're antagonizing it. So really, you want to be using your triggers to your advantage, using your triggers as a catalyst, as an opportunity to step back and analyze yourself. And then finally, like, the main thing is observing without judgment, right? That was the last point that I just hit on, accepting your shadow and shamelessness. Once you get to that point of like accepting, and that's not to say you should be hurtful to people, like that would be something I would recommend to like have a licensed therapist help you out with. But overall, the more you become aware of your shadow and accept your shadow, the more agency you have, the more self-control you have a higher concept of self-worth, and the more embodied you are in yourself and your existence, basically. That's really all that I have to say about the shadow. I feel like there's another video coming about duality and accepting the duality within yourself, but that's an idea for another time, which I will flesh out. I will be posting the Aquarius season singles pick a card Valentine's Day edition to the page, I think sometime around when this video comes up. So definitely stay tuned for that, and I'm going to take care of you guys. Make sure you're taking care of me by liking, commenting, following the pages, subscribing to the content, and just staying up to date and staying in touch with me, okay? I will see you guys on the next video. And until then, just enjoy yourself. Gratitude is the main attitude, okay, guys?